welcome in. It's like sometimes you find a connection you really weren't expecting, and suddenly, like, a lot more things click.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're looking at today. We're
Yeah.
talking about Autism Spectrum Disorder and Hypomania.
Right.
And these seem like, at first glance, really separate things.
Yeah.
But they're more connected than a lot of people realize.
Absolutely.
And the stuff that you sent over from Cheap ABA
Yeah.
really got me thinking about this in a new way.
Good.
So before we get into the specifics, can you kind of like set the stage for us?
Sure.
Why is it so important to understand this connection?
It's really crucial because while we often focus on the communication and social interaction aspects of ASD, there's this whole other layer of experience that we really need to be paying attention to and can be easily overlooked.
Okay.
And that's mood disorders.
Hmm.
And specifically, a higher likelihood of experiencing hypomania.
See, and that's where I think things get really interesting. Because if you were to just say the word hypomania to, like, the average person,
Yeah.
they might think, oh, so they're just like in a really good mood.
Right, exactly.
But it's a lot more than that, right?
It's much more nuanced than just being in a good mood.
Okay.
It's a very distinct state with very specific characteristics. So we're talking about a significantly elevated mood, like a really heightened mood, tons of energy, racing thoughts, often a decreased need for sleep.
Okay.
And while that might sound, kind of appealing.
Yes, sign me up.
Right, that sounds great. But this heightened state can very easily lead to impulsive behaviors, irritability, difficulty focusing, and even risky decision-making.
Yeah.
It's almost like that volume knob is just stuck on high.
Okay.
And it can be really disruptive to daily life.
And this is where I think the connection to ASD is just so important.
Yeah.
Because we're not talking about just like a small percentage of individuals that are experiencing this overlap.
We're not.
The numbers are big.
Right, they really are.
Like, give us some context for those numbers.
So in the general population, the rate of bipolar disorder, which hypomania is part of, is around 1 to 3%.
Okay.
But for individuals with autism, studies are showing that it's estimated to be as high as 20 to 30%.
Wow. So we're talking like almost potentially a 10-fold increase.
Yeah, it's a big jump.
That's huge.
Yep.
So what's going on there? Why is there this strong link between ASD and hypomania?
That's the million-dollar question, and researchers are really working to try to unravel all the complexities of it.
Yeah.
But one of the more prominent theories out there is this concept of emotional dysregulation. So think of it this way. Imagine you're trying to control the temperature in your house.
Okay.
And you have this thermostat that's incredibly sensitive. Even the slightest change can just send the system into overdrive.
Okay.
And that's often what the experience of emotional dysregulation is like for someone with autism. And it can make them more susceptible to those really intense mood swings that are so characteristic of hypomania.
So it's not just about feeling emotions more intensely.
Yeah.
It's about that difficulty in, like, regulating those emotions.
Oh, right.
You got it. Okay.
It's the regulation piece.
Right now.
And it's not just about emotional sensitivity either.
Okay.
We also have to consider the neurobiological factors at play. So the actual differences in brain structure and the activity of neurotransmitters that could be shared between autism and hypomania.
So we've got this kind of like perfect storm situation where you could potentially this like heightened emotional sensitivity combined with these underlying brain differences.
Right.
That might just make someone with autism more prone to having these hypomanic episodes.
Exactly.
Which then leads us to, I think, like the real challenge here.
Yeah.
How do you recognize it?
Yeah.
How do you spot hypomania in someone with autism?
Right.
When some of the signs might seem like, well, that's just how they are sometimes.
All right, exactly.
Because they have ASD.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the real trick, isn't it? It's like trying to spot a slightly different shade of green in a forest.
Yeah.
It's really about those subtle shifts from someone's baseline.
Oh.
Even if their baseline already includes things like, being excited about certain things or having a deep focus on their interests.
Okay, so can you give us some real-world examples here?
Sure.
What are some things that might be like a red flag?
Yeah.
Like, how would you know if it was potentially hypomania?
Right.
And not, like we were saying, just excitement over a favorite video game or something.
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's say you've got a child with autism.
Okay.
Who all of a sudden just has this, like, burst of energy and they can't stop talking about their favorite topic, their special interest, whatever it is.
Which, again, which to a lot of us would seem normal.
Yeah, like if you're passionate.
Exactly.
You get it.
But with hypomania, the thing is it's different.
Okay.
It's different, even for them.
So the energy is excessive.
Hmm.
The speech might be really rapid, or they might sound kind of pressured when they're talking.
Okay.
They might be jumping between tangents.
Okay.
And it's really, really difficult to get them to focus on anything else to redirect them.
So it's about noticing that change,
Exactly.
even if it seems like it's just like more of something they already do.
Right. Exactly.
Gotcha. What else?
Um,
What are some other ways that it could look?
okay, let's say you've got someone with autism who is suddenly way more creative.
Okay.
Like all of a sudden they're producing these incredible pieces of artwork.
Okay.
Or writing all the time, just prolifically,
Huh?
things that, in a vacuum, we'd be like, yeah, go for it.
That's awesome.
Keep going. But if it's coupled with them not sleeping,
Okay.
being really irritable,
Mhm.
maybe starting all these projects but not finishing any of them,
Right.
like those should be the warning signs.
Yeah.
It's not just the creativity itself, it's
Yeah.
everything else around it,
Yeah. The context. Yeah. Context is everything.
Yes,
It's not just looking at that one thing by itself. You
Yeah.
have to look at the whole picture.
exactly.
This is really interesting stuff.
It's complicated, but it's important.
You mentioned earlier that hypomania can actually present differently in someone with autism
Yes.
compared to someone who doesn't have autism.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So while some people without autism might become more extroverted during a hypomanic episode, someone with autism might actually become even more withdrawn socially than they usually are.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So it's kind of the opposite of what you might expect.
Wow.
Or they might be way more sensitive to things, to sensory input.
Okay.
Because remember, autism really influences how we experience and express our emotions. So those signs of hypomania that we normally see might look different.
So it's like you almost need this deeper understanding,
Yeah.
this extra layer of observation. When you're working with someone who has both autism and hypomania,
Exactly. You got to know what you're looking for.
so much could be missed
Easily.
if you're not paying close attention.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's say there's a suspicion that maybe someone with autism is experiencing hypomania.
Okay.
What are the most important next steps?
The most important thing is to find a mental health professional
Okay.
who understands both autism and mood disorders.
Okay, so they have to know both.
Yes.
Can't just be an expert in one but not the other.
Yeah, because you really need someone who gets the nuances of both
Yeah.
to make sure they get the right diagnosis
Okay.
and the right treatment.
So it's about finding that expert that can see the full picture.
The complete picture, exactly.
Not just treating one condition and ignoring the other.
Absolutely, because they're so interconnected.
So once you have that diagnosis, what are some of the treatment options that might be helpful for someone with autism who is also experiencing hypomania?
Right.
So we've talked about finding that right specialist, that expert.
Yeah.
What's next? What does treatment actually look like?
Well, it's really about building a game plan,
Okay.
a personalized toolkit, because there's not one thing that works for everyone.
Okay, so what are some of the tools in that toolkit?
So therapy is often a cornerstone of treatment,
Okay.
especially cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT.
Can you break that down for our listeners who might not be familiar with CBT? What is that?
Yeah, so CBT is really all about giving people the tools to understand how they're thinking so they can recognize what triggers these mood swings.
Okay.
And then most importantly, how to actually deal with those really intense emotions in a healthy way.
So it's about kind of
Exactly.
giving them more control
Yes.
when they're in the middle of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
You're giving them a roadmap
Gotcha.
to navigate those ups and downs.
Okay, so that's therapy. What about medication?
Yeah, so in addition to therapy, medication like mood stabilizers might be something to consider.
Okay.
These can be really helpful in kind of smoothing out those mood swings
Okay.
and making those hypermanic episodes less frequent.
Okay, so less intense and they happen less often.
Exactly, that's the goal.
Got it. Now, beyond professional support, what about family?
Yeah.
What about that support system at home?
So
What can families do to help?
it's funny because sometimes the most basic things can make a huge difference.
Okay, like what?
Like having a routine,
Okay.
a structured, predictable routine can be really grounding,
Okay.
especially for folks who thrive on that routine.
Right, which is often the case.
Exactly.
Always.
Autism.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
And we know that hypomania can lead to more impulsivity,
Yes.
more disorganization.
Exactly. So having that routine can really help.
It's like that safe space.
Yes.
That stable, consistent thing
Absolutely.
in the middle of all that chaos.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
what else? Sleep.
Can't emphasize this one enough.
Sleep is so important
It is so key
for everyone.
for everybody, but especially in this situation,
Yeah.
sleep deprivation can make those mood swings way worse.
Yeah.
So good sleep hygiene is just crucial.
So important. Okay, so routine, sleep.
Yeah.
What else? Are there other things families can do?
Yeah, encouraging activities that promote emotional regulation can be huge.
Okay, so give us some examples.
So it's going to be different for everyone, but like mindfulness exercises,
Okay.
spending time in nature,
Yeah, getting outside.
listening to music,
Mm.
whatever helps that individual feel calm and centered.
It sounds like also just like education is a big part of this too, right?
Huge.
Families need to know what they're dealing with.
Yes, absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
The more families know about autism and hypomania,
Right.
the better they'll be able to spot the signs early on
Okay.
and respond in a way that's helpful
Okay.
and supportive.
And also, I would imagine just like having that understanding of what it's like for that person. Like having that empathy is huge for the family to have as well, right?
It's everything. It's about understanding and not judging.
Yeah.
Letting your loved one know that you're there for them no matter what.
That unconditional support, like you were
Yeah.
saying.
Yes, exactly.
That's so important.
It can make all the difference.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
is there one like big takeaway you would want to leave with our listeners today?
If there's one thing I hope people remember,
Yeah.
it's that we really need to stop thinking of autism as just about those like core challenges.
Okay.
We need to recognize that mood disorders like hypomania
Right.
are more common in people with autism than we realize.
Yeah.
We need to be aware of that.
Be on the lookout.
Yeah, and early intervention, early identification is so important.
It can be life-changing.
Absolutely.
So if you notice something's different,
Yeah.
if you're like, wait a second, this seems like this is more than just a bad day.
Yeah, trust your gut.
Right.
You know this person. If
Yeah.
something feels off,
Yeah.
it probably is.
Ask, could this be something more?
Exactly.
Ask that question.
Because that could be the first step
It could be.
to getting the right help.
Absolutely.
Wow, so powerful.
It's about connecting the dots,
Yeah.
looking out for each other.
Being an advocate
Yes.
for those that maybe don't know how to advocate for themselves yet.
Exactly.
And really just understanding
Yeah.
that autism is complex.
It is.
It's not one size fits all.
Not at all.
It's not just one thing.
Right.
There's so much more to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today.
Well, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This was
It
amazing.
was great to be here.
And to our listeners, we hope this has given you a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Remember, knowledge is power,
Absolutely.
and early intervention is key.
So important. Thank you for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.